Well, you're most welcome to this talk, and I must warn you in advance it is somewhat confusing. So let's look at what it's about. We're looking at this paper here, Implementation and Results of Active Vaccine Safety Monitoring During the Pandemic. So this is about safety of the COVID vaccines. Now, you and me know that the level of side effects were unacceptable. And the interesting thing about this paper is it's from the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the United Kingdom, which is itself largely funded by industry. So let's look at just the headlines from this paper. So they did active surveillance on 36,500 people. And 52% of those had an adverse reaction. Now, that's not too surprising because a lot of these were quite minor. But some had a level of seriousness. But out of the 36,000, 4,134 were considered medically serious. Now, if you do your quick sum there, that works out at 1 in 8.85. So this is data from the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency that is actually showing that the COVID vaccines caused medical harm in 1 out of 9 recipients of the vaccine. Now, the problem with this is we know it's not true. The actual number was probably nearer 1 in 400 to 1 in 800. So quite what is going on here. I think the reason this is important is that this has been picked up by a lot of people who are critical, correctly, of course, of the COVID vaccines and saying, oh, this is horrendous, they're causing medical harm in 1 in 9 patients, but actually it's not showing that. And I am surprised that employees of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency produced this paper, and it is published in Drug Safety. It's a peer-reviewed publication. So a bit confusing, but let's look at the data that they've presented. So they're showing 1 in 9 had serious medical harm. So how come they're showing this? Serious vaccine reaction, 1 in 9. Well, it's even sort of deeper than that, really, because here's the graphic here. These are people that registered in black on the study, going back to virtually the start of the vaccine project and the submissions. So we see that the people that submitted, there's way more submissions than people that registered, which of course means that people gave more than one submission. So for people registered, so 190,000 submissions from 36,000 people. So people were clearly reporting multiple adverse reactions. Each individual was clearly reporting multiple adverse reactions. And yet this was published by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. And it actually gets a bit more concerning than this as well when we read on. They used enhanced monitoring. So some patients they looked at in more detail for 2 cases of Guillain-Barre, both after AstraZeneca, 2 cases of transverse myelitis, again after AstraZeneca, after a first dose, very serious conditions, of course, 2 cases of Bell's palsy. So they looked at those in more detail. But what is perhaps most concerning from their paper is adverse reactions belonging to the pregnancy, puerperium and perinatal areas, time periods. So pregnancy, obviously. Puerperium is the first 6 weeks after childbirth. Perinatal is the time around childbirth. Reproductive system and breast disorders. 26 women, they call them females, who reported an adverse drug reaction came from this group, from this pregnancy, puerperium and perinatal conditions. Total of 28 adverse reactions reported from 2,416 pregnant women. So quite high. I mean, the level of side effects that we're dealing with here, even if it had been the 1 in 800 level that we talked about from the Joe Freeman study many times, any other product would have been taken off the market for that. Why these are still on the market is just completely befuddling, to put it mildly. But let's go on and look at this pregnancy-related data here. Now, this was very concerning. There were 19 reports of spontaneous abortions. 11 reported after a first dose of COVID-19 vaccine, 7 with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, 3 with AstraZeneca and 1 with Moderna. So this is across the vaccines. And 72.7% of the reports occurred after a first dose given in the first trimester. So this, again, is very concerning data published by the MHRA themselves. But again, it's been picked up by people that are critical of the COVID vaccines, but we need to look at this in a little more context, because it's important that we're evidence-based. Whether evidence supports our particular viewpoint or not, we have to look at this objectively. So let's go on and try and do that a little more. Not saying this is an easy video to follow, but it's quite interesting what's going on. Medium time from last reported vaccination to the date of reported spontaneous abortion. Not good. After receiving a first dose of vaccine, that was 11 women, it was 27 days into quartile range, so the middle 50% was 18 to 47 days. After a second dose of vaccine, it was 33 days, a bit longer after a second dose. And tinnitus was another thing they followed up, this horrible ringing in the ears. 1.9% reported tinnitus or related reactions. That's very high, nearly 2%, isn't it? 54 reactions after the first dose, 16 with the second, 6 after the third dose. Approximately 2/3 of the reported tinnitus-related reactions were ongoing at the most recent submission. So people had tinnitus, and for 2/3 of them, it hadn't gone away in the study period, which went up to December 2022. Whether they've still got it or not now, we don't know, but you've probably had tinnitus yourself. You've certainly got friends with tinnitus. Very nasty condition. The idea that 1.9% of people got tinnitus is completely unacceptable, of course, and yet these products are still being, well, the AstraZeneca's not, of course, but the other mRNA products are still being used. Only 1/3 of the people with tinnitus resolved. Now, we always give the links, of course, links for full text of the paper. Do check it out for yourself. It's a fully published paper. There's the abstract. It's all there. Quite readable, actually. I have to say that this paper is I'm surprised staff of the MHRA published this paper, because it is misleading and it's very open to misinterpretation by people who want to put a very bad complexion on the COVID vaccines, 1 in 9 having a serious medical adverse reaction. When, as I've said, we know that's not true. The vaccines there should be a moratorium on the vaccines. They're far too harmful for the benefits. But it's not 1 in 9 having serious medical adverse reactions so far. So why they put that out, just begging to be misunderstood, is really quite. I'm confused. Let me know if you know what they're up to. Is it just that they're not very good at writing papers? I don't know. So anyway, a bit of the background. Yellow card vaccine monitoring was this new system they've set up. So this is running alongside so the ordinary yellow card reporting system is spontaneous. You have to report it yourself, or the doctor has to report it. Here they actively recruited people for surveillance, which of course they have to be complimented for this. This is very good. They've got 2 ways to monitor the safety of the vaccines. So the recruited people that they actively followed up, as well as people that passively reported. So good, well done. And we actually have these results now, and they appear to be concerning. So established by the UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency to facilitate active monitoring, good, we approve. And further characterise safety in populations underrepresented in clinical trials, all good. In a sense, this is kind of a stage 4 clinical trial, isn't it? It's post-marketing surveillance. Now, what they did was they randomly selected individuals to register and actively contacted them to seek information afterwards. So they of all the people that were vaccinated, they sent out invitations to ask them to come into this active surveillance study, and they would report the adverse events. So it confused me a bit at first. So what they did was, when people were vaccinated, a proportion of those were approached and said, do you want to join the active surveillance program? Those that said yes were then sent questionnaires by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency that they then used to collect the data. Good idea. I completely approve. So they randomly selected these people. But of course, the people that replied were the ones that chose to reply. But anyway, so they wanted more information on pregnant and breastfeeding women, that they called females, assessment of safety signals, menstrual disorders and tinnitus. They wanted to look at this in more detail, which of course is good, a bit like bolting the stable door after the horse has bolted, but it's still good. And they did follow them up for 6 months, which is good, because again, in the vaccine trials, the follow-ups were nowhere near long enough. And the demographics recruited reflected the vaccination population. So it was a representative sample of the total people that got vaccinated that were recruited into this active surveillance study. And as we've said, 52.1 of those reporting vaccination reported experiencing at least one adverse reaction, most people reporting several adverse reactions. Most of these were acute reactions. That means they didn't last for long and they got better quickly. But this 13.7% reported an event considered medically serious. And this is what people have picked up on. They've said, oh dear, the COVID vaccines caused acute medically serious reactions in 1 in 8 or 1 in 9 people. That's not the case, actually, as we'll see. The reason we know it's not the case is it's so contradictory of other data. Not saying the vaccines are good, they're not. There should be a moratorium on them. They're doing, in my view, they're doing way more harm than good at the moment. And we've looked at numerous reasons why there's adverse reactions to them on this channel. So we're not defending them at all. We're just being critical and trying to objectively analyse this data because we want to get to the truth. The data raised no safety concerns in pregnant and breastfeeding patients. I assume they mean women. That's a direct quote from the MHRA. So they looked at this data and said, "No, nothing to see here. This is all fine." Their conclusion was it was fine. Data on the incidence of tinnitus were used to monitor more carefully. So that was taken on board. So this is an additional data source, which is all good. And now these are the first few authors. So Jenny Wong, as you see, Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. All of the authors work for the MHRA, which is why it was surprising. Publishing delay, a lot of people have picked up on. Let's get the figures on that. So the data was collected until December 2022 from the start of the vaccination programme. Preprint first appeared in September 2025. The peer review publication was 2025. The preprint was 2024. So pretty well a 2-year delay, which is a bit tardy, but it's not. Yeah. I think we'd have to say it's slow. I mean, the fact that they couldn't get a paper out for nearly 2 years is a bit slow. They should have got this safety data out at a much earlier stage, and that would improve the informed consent that people would be given. So they were a bit slow on that, I must say. I think they were a bit slow. You'd expect papers to be out in under a year, really. Now, why is it not the case that 1 in 9 suffered a serious medical outcome? And as I say, people who are critical of the vaccine have been keen to pick up on this and say, oh, this is horrendous. But it's not as bad as this paper's making it look. This is what befuddles me. This is published by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. And it's making them look like they've approved a really, 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 really unsafe product. Now, they have approved an unsafe product, in my view, but they're making it look even worse than it is with this paper. So, is there questions about competence here? I don't know. It surprises me that it was published in the way it is. So let's look at some of the problems. The seriousness of adverse reactions could be reported by selecting from optional seriousness categories. So it's the people that were actively recruited reported online about their own symptoms. So it's the person's own opinion. And the adverse events occurred in temporal correlation, so they occurred after the vaccine. Doesn't mean they were caused by the vaccine. Some would be, of course. Now, they sent out 1.4 million applications. So they sent out 1.4 million applications and 36,000 people took up on it. So the people that took up this active surveillance option obviously were taking more of an interest than the rest of the 1.4 million that didn't bother. That's what you call a selection bias. So there's a lot of selection bias in this study, and it wasn't really strongly addressed by the writers in this. It was addressed, but not as strongly as I would have expected it to be. They just put this data out and said, "Oh, everything's fine." What they did, they put out a lot of extra information with it, but most people, of course, wouldn't rake through all the additional information, and it's not on the PDF. So 1.4 million was sent out, and so the 36,000 that took up the invitation represents 2.5% of those invited. So a very small number of those invited took it up. So we've got this self-selection bias. It's basically a self-selecting sample. Arthritis and myalgia, arthralgia, pain in the joints, myalgia, pain in the muscles, were considered medically serious events when in actual fact, okay, they're unpleasant, but usually they're self-resolving and not medically serious, but they had these relatively minor adverse reactions, probably not acceptable, but relatively minor, that were counted as serious when in actual fact they probably, in most cases, weren't that serious. Little attempt to confirm that there were genuine adverse reactions. Some were checked out medically, some were not, by doctors, some were not. Most adverse reactions were acute, mostly transitory, so pain at the site, pain in extremities, fatigue, headache, pyrexia, fever, achy joints, nausea, rash. That they were considered transient, and the MHRA said they basically weren't a problem. So the MHRA put out this alarming looking data and said, nothing to see here, this is fine, aren't we clever for doing this extra monitoring system? Now, they are good for doing this extra monitoring system, and yet they put out this data that looks like 1 in 9 had medically serious adverse reactions, and yet because they were self-reported with a self-selecting sample, there's a lot of opportunity for bias here. So we have to be careful not to use this paper as the smoking gun that says vaccines are really bad. I think they are, but this is not the paper that shows them. And it frankly confuses me why MHRA have allowed this to come out from their well, I don't know if the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency published this themselves, but it's people that work for them that wrote it and published it. So I'm surprised they put out something with such great potential for ambiguity. But it's not as bad as it looks, but it's not good either. And of course, we still know there's all sorts of risks from the vaccines. We're not saying they're safe by any means. They're not. They're unacceptable. Systemic distribution. We know all the side effects. We've interviewed the people who've had appalling, life-changing side effects. And some of them, of course, aren't with us anymore. But why they put out this paper that makes their products that they regulated on a prima facie examination look so bad is confusing. But they did. That's the paper. Look at it for yourself. Look at the links. They're all there. And if you can, relieve my confusion over this paper, because it's a very strange paper indeed, I would have thought. But let me know what you think. But I would say don't worry. Serious medical adverse events did not occur in 1 in 9. I guess part of it is kind of the difference between a major and a minor procedure. We say this in healthcare. You know, we talk about someone coming in for a minor procedure, but the joke is that a minor procedure is any procedure carried out on someone else, and a major procedure is carried out on me. So maybe people thought their adverse reactions were more serious than they were because they were suffering from them. So it's bad, but not as bad as this paper makes it look. And I sign off being somewhat confused. So thank you for watching, and if you can help me, do put in the comments why you think they would publish this paper in the format that it's in. Thank you for watching.